Vrindavan ki jai, Shri Mayapur Navadip ki jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Ujjwala Vrat ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanandi Hari. It'll be the Mangalacharna one, please. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Vilitandina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindobhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. And now we'll look at the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapter number 8, text number 31. This is from the prayers of Queen Kunti. Gopyada de tvai kridagasi damatavad yate dashashru kalilunjana sambramaksham vaktram naniya bhavabhavana yastatasya samam vimohayati bhir api yad bheti. My dear Krishna, Yashoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes. And you were afraid, though fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. Purport. Here's another explanation of the bewilderment. Created by the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the supreme in all circumstances, as already explained. Here is a simple example of the Lord's being the supreme, and at the same time a plaything in the presence of his pure devotee. The Lord's pure devotee renders service unto the Lord out of unalloyed love only, and while discharging such devotional service, the pure devotee forgets the position of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord also accepts the loving service of his devotees more relishably when the service is rendered spontaneously out of pure affection, without anything of reverential admiration. Generally, the Lord is worshipped by the devotees in a reverential attitude, but the Lord is meticulously pleased when the devotee, out of pure affection and love, considers the Lord to be less important than himself. The Lord's pastimes in the original abode of Goloka Vrindavan are exchanged in that spirit. The friends of Krishna consider him one of them. They do not consider him to be of reverential importance. The parents of the Lord, who are all pure devotees, consider him a child only. The Lord accepts the chastisements of the parents more cheerfully than the prayers of the Vedic hymns. Similarly, he accepts the reproaches of his fiancées more palatably than the Vedic hymns. When Lord Krishna was present in this material world to manifest his eternal pastimes of the transcendental realm of Goloka Vrindavan as an attraction for the people in general, he displayed a unique picture of subordination before his foster mother, Yashoda. The Lord, in his naturally childish, playful activities, used to spoil the stocked butter of Mother Yashoda by breaking the pots and distributing the contents to his friends and playmates, included the celebrated monkeys of Vrindavan, who took advantage of the Lord's munificence. Mother Yashoda saw this, and out of her pure love, she wanted to make a show of punishment for her transcendental child. She took a rope and threatened. She took a rope and threatened the Lord that she would tie him up, as is generally done in the ordinary household. Seeing the rope in the hands of Mother Yashoda, the Lord bowed down his head and began to weep just like a child. And tears rolled down his cheeks, washing off the black ointment smeared about his beautiful eyes. This picture of the Lord is adored by Kunti Devi because she is conscious of the Lord's supreme position. He is feared often by fear personified, yet he is afraid of his mother, who wanted to punish him just in an ordinary manner. Kunti was conscious of the exalted position of Krishna, whereas Yashoda was not. Therefore, Yashoda's position was more exalted than Kunti's. Mother Yashoda got the Lord as her child, and the Lord made her forget altogether that her child was the Lord himself. If Mother Yashoda had been conscious of the exalted position of the Lord, she would certainly have hesitated to punish the Lord, but she was made to forget this situation because the Lord wanted to make a complete gesture of childishness before the affectionate Yashoda. This exchange of love between the mother and the son was performed in a natural way, and Kunti, remembering the scene, was bewildered, and she could do nothing but praise the transcendental maternal love. Indirectly, Mother Yashoda is praised for her unique position of love, for she could control even the all-powerful Lord as her beloved child. The material world is certainly a difficult place, as Devahuti laments to her son, Kapiladev. It seems impossible to remove myself from the material world. There's a constant feeling that I am my mind, I am my life situation. And it starts the moment that one comes out of the womb, and it persists all the way until the last minute before one leaves this body. In fact, Prabhupada used to tell a story about a man who didn't believe that the lust in the heart of a person would last, even at the time of death. So he said there was this minister, he brought a young girl, and this old man was about to die, and his eyes immediately went to the girl. And he could see that the attraction was there. This is in the deep heart of the conditioned soul. There's this condition, hridrogam. It's the dread disease of the heart, lust, attraction to the material world. And because of repeatedly being in ignorance, birth after birth, that impression is so strong. The samskar of enjoyment is there, even though there's no ultimate reward except for death. As soon as the baby comes out of the womb, it's immediately attracted to the material world. Not only that, as mentioned in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when the 4 Kumaras wanted to know from Brahma, how is it that the living entity can ever get freed from this attraction to the material world? Brahma couldn't answer the question because he had just been in contact with Rajas. One cannot understand the solution from the position of the modes of material nature. And just at that time, the Lord came in a very interesting form as Hamsa, a swan, and began verbally sparring with the Kumaras, asking them questions. And then when they asked their question, Hamsa said, it's not that the mind, that we ever become free, we can free the mind. It's not that we can free the mind from the material world. Because he said, the sense objects are embedded in the mind. The subtle sense objects of the world are embedded in the mind, and the mind is embedded in the world. So there's a natural connection. He said, we must disconnect ourselves from our minds and see that I'm not my mind. The mind remains connected to the world. And throughout the ages, there are many philosophers who talk about how to deal with the existential situation of the human being. Some, like Charvak Muni, say, don't worry about it. Just try to enjoy. Beg, borrow, or steal, but get ghee. He takes it that it doesn't matter how you find happiness in this life, because when you die, it's all finished. That philosophy still is people still propound that directly or indirectly today. So what's the difference? You only live once. And then there are philosophers that say desire is the root of all suffering. And therefore you have to reach nirvana, which means something like blowing out a candle. And when the candle goes out, it was there a minute ago, but now it doesn't exist anymore. So there's no more problem. And Prabhupada used to compare this to a doctor. It's like, okay, where does it hurt? Oh, I have a headache. All right, we'll just cut your head off. Headache's gone, right? Yeah, but so is my life. And this idea that I'll just stop being a living entity isn't possible either. I mean, Krishna makes that clear in the Bhagavad Gita. Nahi kashit shanamapi jatutishtat karma krit karyate hivashak karma sarva prakriti jargunai. Don't think, Arjuna, that you're going to stop existing. Arjuna was in perplexity because of the situation he was in. And at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he was in the same situation, but he had changed his philosophy in life and his outlook. Everything had changed. So everybody, every living entity is absorbed in some kind of idea about how to find happiness. We can't avoid that. Anandamayo bhyasat. It's the nature of the living entity to try to enjoy happiness. We're part and parcel of the origin of all happiness. So it's our nature. And it's perplexing to not be able to find it anywhere. And therefore it can be very disappointing. And therefore Krishna says in the Gita, Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashrita bhavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavamagata. There's a way through the process of devotional service, he said, by getting purified by association of sadhus, that you can rise above these confusions and misconceptions. The misconception that I should try to enjoy the material world as much as possible. It doesn't work. It's been tried. Musicians sing about it. Poets write about it. They all say the same thing. My girlfriend and my hound dog left me and took away the pickup truck. Here I am. My guitar is broken. They sing a sad country song. Everybody's got a sad song to sing in the material world. Even those who accumulate wealth, they end up admitting that I wasn't satisfied. And even those who hang in there to the last minute and make a show of it, it just becomes ludicrous to everybody else. Like, come on, give it up. Stop trying. It doesn't look right. Try to enjoy the material world. And then the idea that we're nothing doesn't work also. Krishna says, give up the fear of your sacred individualism, of being a sacred individual. This he talks about in earlier, na tvevaham chatunasam, na tvam nemi janadipa, na chaiva na bhavishyama, sarve vayamata param. He said, all these living entities, all these kings, they're here on the battlefield as individuals. They were individuals before, and after death, they'll remain individuals as well. Always an individual. So give up the fear of being an individual. And also stop being confused. How do you do that? By sincerely inquiring and listening, leaning in to hear exactly what is my position and what's the real purpose of life. It's something very specific. It's not nothing. That's why in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, we hear the word dhimahi. Dhimahi means something very profound, actually, that you're specifically meditating. You're applying your mind to something that's defined. It's not nothing. It doesn't mean to become conscious of nothing. It doesn't mean to be in an amorphous state or to merge into something. Dhimahi means to use your intelligence and apply it and focus it on that which is real, on reality. Nasato vidite bhavo, nabhavo vidite sata, ubayo rapitushnon tas tvanios tatvadarshibhi. Krishna says, those who are knowers of the truth understand that there is something that exists. And those who are not seers of the truth, they're absorbed in that which is constantly changing. So the Bhagavad Gita gives us the foundation to understand that we're not nothing, we're something. And what we are is very specific. And the beginning of all knowledge means to come to that specificity in purpose and understand, just as when Sanatana and Rupa Goswami inquired from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he didn't give him some very difficult to understand answers. He said that here's what you are. You are an eternal servant of Krishna, and you're part and parcel eternally of Krishna. And somehow or other, you've been separated from that. And now you just have to turn around with very specific information. He told the story to Sanatana Goswami of the astrologer and the poor man. And the poor man had lost his way in life and was morose until he met the astrologer. And the astrologer told him, you shouldn't be lamenting. You're actually wealthy. Your father left you an inheritance, And there's a map that shows exactly where it is. So now you can be happy. And then he went more into detail about what is your nature. Kesha gra shatabhagasha saramsha shadrishatmaka jiva suksmo sorupo yam sankyatito hichitkana. You're a particle of that eternal, supreme, complete whole, and tiny little particle, but it's chitkana, it's conscious, different from the material energy. He told him there are these material energies, bhumirapo anahulvayu kammano bhujar evacha ahankara itya me bina prakriti rashtada. The earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego are the separated material energies. That's easy to understand. And above them, aparayam itastanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yedam darete jagat. There is you, that chit kana, the particle of consciousness that's superior to matter, but now you've become absorbed in matter, abhinibheshita. So he gives the path of bhakti, which is the solution to this conundrum of trying to enjoy in the material world and then failing miserably. Actually, we don't really enjoy here. We try to avoid suffering as much as possible. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that also. He told Sanatan, nobody actually enjoys here. He said, actually, the enjoyment here is like the dunking board. A king, to punish people, and in the Bush administration also, they used to take a board and they'd put somebody on it and then dunk them in the river until they were almost drowned, and then they'd pull them out. It's horrible punishment. Pull them out of the water and let them get a breath. And as they're taking a breath, then there's a sense of relief from the horrible situation. And that, Mahaprabhu said, is what we take as happiness in the material world. It's no happiness at all. So the Bhagavad Gita, through giving verses from the Bhagavad Gita and the Vishnu Purana, Mahaprabhu is gradually giving the foundation of real knowledge, of understanding. He told Sanatan that actually the Lord has multifarious energies, that you're part of that energy, a part of the Lord's energy, and that by coming in contact with a Vaishnava, you can then get the proper conception of life. And he said that the Vaishnava is a Vaidya, or a doctor. And the doctor carries instructions and hymns. Here's your medicine. I'll tell you how to take it, and now you take it. You take the mantras, you take the hymns. And the hymns also include the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. And anyone who can take this and hear from a Vaishnav who has imbibed this knowledge and who has established his or her relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore is under the control of the internal energy. Krishna mentions this in the Gita. He says, Mahatmanas tumam parta daivim prakriti mashrita bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. That the great souls, the Mahatmas, they're under the control of the internal energy, the Swarup Shakti. They may be walking in this world, but their activities are not registering on the level of karma at all, because their intention is completely different. This is Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmanyanavratam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruchite. When one is no longer affected at all, shunyam, from jnana and karma, no longer calculating, what do I get from this? Or trying to figure out, like on the karma kanda level, although the person's following some scriptural rule, thinking, so what do I get from this? What's my cut? And in Gyan, One's trying to measure everything, measure the absolute truth. Even Brahma, who's the most intelligent person, he studied the Vedas 3 times, Bhagavatam says. First time he understood it as karma, second time as jnana, third time he understood bhakti. And we can see he's very intelligent. That can be a curse, to be too intelligent. he thought he could outsmart Krishna. But after he saw Krishna's nature and the nature of Vrindavan and the residents there, he said, Jnane prayasa murapasya namanta eva jivanti san mukharitam bhavadi avartam stane stita shrutikatam tanavan manobir ye prayaso jita jito pyasitaistri. Just give up trying to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead with your intelligence. Completely give it up. And surrender yourself to the sound vibration that comes from Goloka Vrindavan, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the divine revelation coming down through Srila Vyasadeva, which describes the activities in the spiritual world, which is the medicine that Vaidya brings. When you meet a Vaishnava doesn't say, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It's all peace. Just be peace. All peace, rest. No. The devotees are talking about the specifics of the spiritual world and what Krishna is doing there and how his devotees are interacting with him and what their feelings are in the spiritual world. So many times we have events in our life where we're overcome by emotion. We can't help it. We lose a loved one or on the verge of losing somebody, and we're just overwhelmed. Where's all that emotion coming from? If you have somebody who tells you, oh, that's nothing, that's just the mixing of the modes of material nature. Like, let me get a different philosopher, because that seems real to me. Well, the sentiments are real, they're just misplaced. And in the spiritual world, there's an ocean of emotions that the devotees are constantly overcome by, but it brings great ecstasy. In the material world, the emotions are misplaced because they're in relationship to the dead material body and this material world, which is constantly being destroyed. So again, Krishna's telling us, yes, you're a person, but don't invest yourself here in this world. Don't invest yourself in the relationships of the material world. Paras tasmatu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana yaksaksarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu navinashati. He assures us there's another place. It's not destroyed. It doesn't deteriorate like this one. It's supreme. Even when everything else disappears, it's there. It's going on constantly. That's my supreme abode, Krishna talks about. Whereas the material world, bhutva bhutvara praliyate, constantly being destroyed. The bodies we have constantly being destroyed. So the need of the soul in this world to get free from that immediate attraction that happens as soon as one comes out of the womb, from the time of birth all the way to the second of death, is to, Krishna says, achieve a higher taste. Vishaya vinivartande niraharsa dehina rasa varjam rasopyasya param jishva nivartate. He says you have to, Krishna says, in order to not just be restraining your senses, it won't work. It doesn't work to restrain your senses. We're not after this kind of restraint, but we engage in positive activities through which we come to a higher taste. Param jishva nivartate. Then Krishna says, naturally you'll give up the lower taste. By hearing about something better, by tasting something that's sweeter, by getting $100, you give up your $5 debts. So this is why Narada Muni made such a strong point. He so strongly pointed out, I should say, to Vyasadeva, that you have to bring this knowledge of relationship between the soul and Krishna and describe it in detail. You haven't done it yet. You've written all the Vedas, but you didn't do it. So you've cheated people. You gave them false hopes that maybe you could have best of both worlds, hang out in the material world and just do some Vedic processes. And he says, Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjitam, nashobate jnanam alam niranjanam, kutakpuna shashvara bhadramishvare, nacharpitam karma yarapyakaranam. Even if you tell them about niranjana, just working without fruit of activities, even if you describe self-realization, you're not your body, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. He said, Shobhate, it's not beautiful enough to attract the soul away from this material world. I can't break that attachment. It has to be something so astoundingly beautiful, compelling, and sweet that I totally forget about the material world. And this is the promise of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or those to take to the process of bhakti, no matter what situation he or she is in now. If you get association with pure devotees and you hear from them the Bhagavatam, you serve the pure devotees. You have to serve the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat. You have to be in the assembly of devotees. This is bhakti. It means sadhu sangha. And you hear the holy names and you hear the pastimes of Krishna in that association. Vikriditam vrajavadu biraham cha Vishnu shradhanvito nashunuyad atavarna yedya bhaktim param bhagavate pratilabhyakam amridrogam ashvapahinot yacharena dhira. Said very quickly, actually, if you are in a safe environment, shradhanvito nashunuyad means that you're able to be in an environment where you have safe harbor. You're with the devotees. There's no mixture of karma and jnana in their katha, because they have complete and total faith in Krishna. They're already in the other world. What's the question of faith? They're already seeing it for themselves, and they're describing it. And as they're describing it, then it becomes real for you. And as you hear about the details of the spiritual world and the relationships in the spiritual world, especially Krishna has these intimate relationships with his devotees. And when you hear about the way that Krishna is controlled by the love of his devotees, as we heard in the purport, he relishes being chastised by his devotee. You're not so great. Or the gopis, when they're in Man, Krishna comes to visit, and Radharani's guardians say, she doesn't want to see you. Go away. This is Krishna's relishing this so deeply. Who knows about this? This Rupa Goswami was writing. It's like, Anarpita charim chirat karuna yavatirna kalo samarpayitumanato jvalarasam sabhakti shriyam hari purata sundara dyuti kadamba sandipta sarahridaya kandare spuratu va sachinandana. That this hasn't been told to the world before. Anarpita. Nobody ever told anybody about this. So how you expect to get out of here? And nobody told me. I just minded my own beeswax, came out of the womb and went on grinning along, all the way through high school. And someone said, hey, come here for a second, little Jiva. I got a secret to tell you. This world's a big fake. It's a colossal hoax. It's all rigged. The whole thing's rigged. And there's another world. And only until somebody gets that information, that's what Narada was telling Srila Vyasadeva. Tadvag visargo janatago viplavo yasmin prati shlokam avadyavatyapi namanyanantashya shonkitani yat shrinvanti gayanti grananti sadhava. Viplava, it's like it flips over your life. It's like a boat that gets flipped over. Merrily, gently down the stream, however that goes, until you get down the stream of samsara, until somebody flips your boat over. That's what that verse means. And that comes from news from the spiritual world. Narada said, you have to tell that. That can flip the living entity out of this illusory idea of the trance in material existence, just watching the shadows, can't break out of it, has to get superior knowledge and information. So from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives a hint to all of us about the fact that there's this complete system through which, even though you're born into the material world through yajna, you can purify yourself, purify your senses, purify all your activities. You can transform your environment. Sahajagna, Prajashishra, Puravacho, Prajapati. And he talks about how everything that's used for the higher purpose, it becomes transcendentalized. He talks about how if a person is engaged in transcendental purpose in life, then even if he kills, he's not killing. And then he goes to this point about if somebody becomes situated on the path of devotional service so determinedly that even if it appears they're doing something wrong, if you think they're doing something wrong, then you're the one who's wrong. You're the one who's committing a sin, not that person. Because Shripram Bhavati Dharma Ma Shashvashamti Navgachati, because they're so lined up with the spiritual world through the devotional service, even if it appears they're making some misstep, don't think it, actually, because it's so powerful, the process of devotional service. Very quickly they come to the perfectional stage. So one of the processes of the 64 items of devotional service, one of the 64 items of devotional services is Kartik Vrat, which is, there's details given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. Jiva Goswami brings out more in his commentary about Kartik Vrat being one of the 64 limbs of bhakti. Padma Purana talks about Swalpam Seva, that in this Kartik time, when you do even a little bit of service, it's amplified. And that it's a month it's the month of Damodar, a time to remember the pastimes of Krishna as a child. So that's why we sing that song. It's recommended. It's given there in the Padma Purana about Krishna's childhood pastimes, which Kunti Devi is remembering here, how Krishna, in his childhood pastimes and being assisted by his internal potency, Leela Shakti, he's playing like a little boy. A little boy. If you tell that to people, who is God, they say, who will believe that? Who will understand that? In fact, Raghupati Upadhyaya, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met this Brahmin scholar, he could recognize, oh, here's a nice Vaishnava. So he said, tell me something about Krishna. So Raghupati Upadhyaya said, Who will believe me when I say the absolute truth? He's crawling in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. Other people, they follow the Vedas out of fear of death. They study Mahabharata. So I just worship Nanda Maharaj because in his courtyard, the absolute truth is crawling around as a little baby. And then when Vyasadeva saw all these pastimes from his trance, he went to Shamyapras, a place where the modes are in equilibrium, good place for meditation, a little different than Silicon Valley or New York or Atlanta. Of course, temples are transcendental, but Shamyapras is a special place. His little cottage there, surrounded by berry trees. I always wanted to go there and just take a little time off in that cottage. He went there under the order of his spiritual master and in devotional trance. He saw the pastimes of Krishna in the spiritual world, and he wrote about it. You'll find it there in the 10th canto, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then by hearing those pastimes, and of course the 9 cantos that come before explain how it is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and what are his unlimited potencies, and what are the pitfalls of the material world. It's so convincing, isn't it? Sundar Prabhu, the first 9 cantos. I was in Govardhan, and there was a group of devotees there. One of them, the first time to Govardhan, listening in Bhagavatam. I think we were reading the 5th canto, and it's so profound, the experience when devotees sit and listen to Bhagavatam. But I just remember he walked out of the room and he said to Keshav Bharati Maharaj, "What was I thinking?" He meant, like, what was I thinking when I came here to the material world in the first place? And why did I waste the first half of my life, or the first quarter of it? What was I thinking? And so when one is able to absorb that in the association of devotees, and then hear submissively the pastimes of Krishna with Yashoda, understand the mysteries of his birth and activities in this world, and then the relationships that he has with his devotees, then the heart becomes attracted gradually. And with the attraction of the heart for Krishna and for Krishna's associates and the way that they're rendering service, then naturally, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yashu Vairagyam. Say the rest. Thank you. Jnanam cha yadahaitukam. That this naturally, one gets knowledge, one gets detachment, and Nashta Prayusha Bhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Utama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. It's not that, it's actually, as Kapila Dev said, it's that your subtle body, it becomes dissolved. It's so powerful. The hearing and chanting, so powerful. It dissolves the gross, the subtle material body. By that process, naturally, the attraction to the material world, the lower modes of material nature, tadarajas tamobhava, kama lobharayasche, cheteter navidam stitam sattve prasidati. They become noticeably diminished. And evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata, bhagavat tattva vijnana mukta sangha sajayate. One becomes situated in the truth, scientifically, understands directly, and becomes joyful. The mind becomes joyful. So this practice of Kartik Vrat, of remembering every day Krishna and his pastime with Mother Yashoda, where Yashoda chases after him and ties him up and isn't able to tie him up, then because of her hard work, Krishna agrees to be tied up by Yashoda. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said something for us to remember, in that the 2 inches that the rope is too short again and again represent 1 inch is our own endeavor to try to please Krishna, to reach Krishna, and the other is Krishna coming to us because he sees that we're making that endeavor. Otherwise, nothing works out in this world. Everything, with the best laid plans, everything is 2 inches too short. Doesn't matter what you do. It'll always be short. Only with Krishna's blessings. And of course, in the culmination of the pastime, we know that the twin Arjun trees, the brothers had received benediction, curse from Narada, that you'll become twin Arjun trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. But when Krishna comes, he'll come there and he'll have his darshan, and from that you'll be liberated. And that's a very important point Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Prabhupada makes very strongly, and that is that, and when you take shelter of a devotee, and the devotee tells you, do this, Krishna takes that instruction that the devotee said, and they said, okay, I have to do it now. Because that's the point that Nalukuvera and Manigriva, they were debauched. But Narada came and chastised them, but the curse he gave them was actually a benediction. And he said, Krishna will come and liberate you. So when Krishna came, then he said, Narada said it, so I have to liberate them. And this is also in the Bhagavatam about, in the prayers of the demigods for Lord Krishna in the womb, when they mentioned that when a great devotee performs devotional service, he's doing it for himself to go back to Godhead, but also he leaves the process behind. And if you simply follow that process as it was given, as it was prescribed, then Krishna blesses it. He'll say, okay, pure devotee said it, pure devotee put it forward. That person's following it, therefore it's efficacious. It'll have its effect. That's another important lesson from the pastime. So from a very practical point of view, wherever we are now, if we're aligned with the process as best we can, following the footsteps of the Guru Parampara, who have passed down the instruction of how to perform devotional service, and we're doing that and hearing in the association of devotees and serving, then the path to Goloka is very clear and infallible. You get moved by that being in the Sangha of devotees. Like somebody was telling me about how they had this yatra in Puri at the Rath Yatra, and one of their members got lost, separated. There's 1 million people there. You get to see what 1 million people in one place looks like when you go to the Jagannath Rath Yatra. It's an Olympic sport going through that crowd, actually. But anyway, some innocent devotee had never been there before, and he was with the yatra group, and they got in the crowd, and he got lost and separated. But if you look out into the crowd at Jagannath Puri, you'll notice that it's not indistinct. Actually, you can identify the groups there. Some are really big groups. They're all wearing the same thing, or they have the same flags, and you can see, oh, that's one group within the mass of people. And then that's another group, smaller group over there, group. Right, Shamarupa? Groups everywhere. So this devotee, this poor devotee got separated from his group, and he got pushed into another group. And so then when you're in the crowd, it's that tight, you can't really move. So the group was moving him. So the group was just moving along. It's like, okay, wherever you go, I go, because I can't do anything else. And when we're able to insert ourselves somewhere, find where you can put yourself in a group of Vaishnavas. If you can deliberately do that, this is one of the most important things to do. And then practically, I don't feel like it. It's too late. You're being moved along. It's like, okay, we're all moving this way now. It's like, okay, I guess we are. That's the way it goes. Somehow, or by good fortune, if we can wander into the group that's following in the footsteps of the pure devotees, then we'll be moved along despite whatever imperfections or despite any hesitancy. The force of that will bring us along. And of course, as I've said many times, one of my favorite sections, Tatteno Kampam Susamikshimanu, in the purport, said, what's the minimum requirement to inherit the kingdom of God? You know, it's like, you just have to stay alive, Brahma said. Keep your attitude above offensive and just accept whatever's happening as Krishna's mercy. If you can get that much intelligence and follow that, you just stay alive somehow in Krishna consciousness. Don't blow it. Then you'll inherit. What to speak if you try? What to speak if you try to, spiritual enterprise, you try to make something out of this, say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen if I try to become a pure devotee, if I actually try to apply myself? The worst thing that can happen in the material world is try to apply yourself as you lose everything. And that's about the worst thing that's going on everywhere. But if you try to apply yourself in Krishna consciousness, I mean, Narada's mood is tasyaiva heta prayate kovino nalabhyate yad brahmatamu paryada talabhyate dukkha varanyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabhira ramhasa. He says, you'll never lose if you go for it in Krishna consciousness. Just try to follow the pure devotees. Try to do the process. Follow the vrat as best as you can. And try to make something out of your devotional life. Then he said, what's the harm? If you don't make it, if you fall short, he said, you still get to keep your forward progress. And everything counts, but it especially counts in Kartik. Padma Purana says, swalpam, even if you do a tiny, tiny little bit with a little feeling, especially offering a lamp, with feeling in your heart, oh Krishna, you're so beautiful. Oh, this is so nice. The incense, the lamp, the time of year, offering Krishna's there. And if that feeling comes into your heart, then this is eternal benefit that will eventually transfer us back into that realm of the spiritual world. So it's a portal to the spiritual world, this Kartik Vrat. And even if somebody doesn't know exactly what it is, if they just participate in the sweet ceremony, see Krishna's form, offer the lamp, sing the song, take a little prasad, then that person will become a great, fortunate soul. Kartik Mahatmya tells about the mouse who lived on the altar. You notice it sometimes in Vrindavan, a little mouse runs by. It's like, oh, that's where you live. And he would, every day, he'd come out and check out all the ghee lamps to see if any of them had any ghee left in them. Because sometimes they don't burn all the way down. You all know that when you're doing artik, you look and it only burned halfway or 3/4 of the way. There's a good amount of ghee in there. That's a lot for a little mouse. So he was coming out every day, eating a little ghee. Then during Kartik, one day, he was chewing on that ghee wick, but it still had a little spark on it. But then as he was chewing, it caught fire again, and it got hot, and he couldn't get it off his tooth. So he started jumping up and down in front of Lord Narayan on the altar. And the Lord saw the little mouse jumping with the lamp, and he said, Kartik, he's offering me a lamp. So next life, he became a very exalted Brahmana, and in the next life after that, he went back to Vaikuntha. Padma Purana gives many such stories about the benefit of offering a lamp during the Kartik Vrat. I mean, who does that anyway? People do like to put lights here and there for Halloween. I saw lights, this and that. But, this Vrat every day of coming in and offering Krishna a lamp is very special, and singing the song about Krishna's. It's a very intimate song, talking about the Krishna's form and his mother's love for him. And all of these things, they churn that emotion within the heart, and they bring us back to Godhead. So now let's just see if there's any reflections or questions. I'm going to look on my little grid and see if anybody's writing on that thing. So I have it right here.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Accept my humble obeisances, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Guru Maharaj, I was reflecting on that point you made that nobody is happy in this material world, and that musicians write about it, poets sing about, or musicians sing about it, poets write about it. I was thinking of that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, only two kinds of people are happy in this world, the foolish and the transcendental. So I was just reflecting on that point.
That's true, yeah. Those who are grossly foolish and those who are Paramahamsas. Everybody else in between is suffering, but the happiness of a fool is lamentable. They just think they're happy. But it's a topic that comes up in various places in the Nectar Devotion, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Rupa Goswami talks about the gradations of happiness, and starts with material happiness, that it's really no happiness at all. Kutakmana shashvara bhadramishvare. Said, where is it? It's abhadra. It's always inauspicious when you try to do material pleasure. And Krishna says it in the Gita so succinctly, Yehi samsparchaja bhoga dukayonai evate adyantavanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. He said the intelligent don't tinker, they don't dabble in material happiness, because they know a little dabbling, and next thing you know, you've got yourself little dookie running around with you. Dookie, little meant to torture you. He says from the womb of this material happiness comes the dookie. Hi, dookie. How long you staying for? Rest of your life. Dookie, yeah. So he said the Buddha, the intelligent people, they're careful not to mistake material happiness for actual happiness, because it's a source of misery. Then he says Brahman happiness. It's millions of times greater than material happiness. Material happiness, like if you're in the desert and you're thirsty, you're dying of thirst, and then somebody comes and says, I'll give you water. And you, yes, please. And then he brings an eyedropper and says, here's one drop of water. You can't argue. In a court of law, you can't say there was no water. Yes, I gave water. It just was not enough. It's not enough to quench our thirst. And then Brahman happiness, millions of times better. But compared to Brahman happiness, the happiness of bhakti is millions of times greater. It makes the happiness of Brahman look like the water contained within the hoofprint of a calf compared to the huge ocean. So we actually want oceans of happiness, but we're getting substandard, no happiness at all. And that's horrible. Isn't that horrible? Getting insult to injury. It's like, I was noticed material happiness is like that, you know. It's like people go out to have a good time and they drink some poison like alcohol, and then they get sick, head spins, they do something stupid, get arrested or whatever, and then they had to pay for it too. They go to some fancy place and it cost them a lot of money to pay for it. That's called insult to injury. So that's the material world, this big insult to injury program going on here. Thanks, Kodruma Prana. Let's see what you got here. In this world, two types of people are free from all anxiety and merge in great happiness. One who is a retarded and childish fool, and one who has approached the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the three modes of material nature. Well, there you have it. Anything else from the Zoom room? I see there's lots of stuff here.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Gopal Champu.
They said my humble basis.
Are you in New York or Atlanta?
I'm back in Atlanta.
Back in Atlanta.
Back in the South. In the New York City of the South. So I was just thinking about this principle for this point of forgetfulness of Krishna. Now we hear Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, Matasmriti Jnanam Aponaham Chaso. For him comes forgetfulness. Now we know it's Krishna's mercy that he allows us to forget him, to try to enjoy this material world. But on the other side of that, one is trying to surrender to Krishna and practice devotional service and wants to remember Krishna. Why does Krishna then also make him forget him at that time?
Well, Krishna doesn't make us. Gajendra says Krishna's always there looking for a sign from us so that he can jump in and help us. And he doesn't even wait for us to pray. He's just hoping for that. You'll see that in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita when Gopakumar comes to Vaikuntha, Lord Narayan saying, I've waited for you too long. I couldn't take it anymore. That's why I made a setup so he could come back. And that represents Krishna's mood. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. So then if somebody takes to devotional service, then because of past conditioning, it can be on again, off again. And this is anishta bhajana kriya. Practicing devotional service, but sometimes I like it and other times I don't. Sometimes I remember and sometimes I forget. And it's just like when you have a disease, it's not over till it's over, because you have to cure the whole disease. Mahaprabhu said that when Sanatan came and joined him, and he had a fancy blanket on, and Mahaprabhu kept looking at it. And then Sanatan could understand he didn't like my blanket. So he went down to the ghat and he said to this poor person down there with an old ripped quilt and said, "You want to trade?" And the guy said, why would you, what do you call it? Why are you trolling me here? And he said, "I'm not trolling you. I just want your blanket for my own reasons." So he said, "Sure, here you go." Then when he went back with that blanket, that old torn blanket, then Mahaprabhu was unlimitedly happy. And he said, when a doctor deals with a disease, he makes sure that it's all gone. Why would he leave any last vestige? So Krishna sometimes, for his own reasons, there's a way that Krishna deals with his devotees. Yasya hamana grinnami harishe taddanam shadai. Tato janam tajant yasya swajano dukkha dukhitam. This is one of the ways, why I'm doing devotional service, why is Krishna taking everything away? It's like, because he knows what's good for you. And sometimes when we're performing devotional service, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says if we're doing it half-heartedly or offensively, then say like a merchant, if you work someplace, you got a good job, and then you're late consistently late. Not something you'd do, but it was something that, somebody who's a bad employee. And then finally, the employer doesn't like it anymore and says, okay, you're out of a job, son. I was like, no, let me back in. Give me another chance. Forget it. I already gave you 2 chances. You're out. And then the person goes home and thinks about it for a while and thinks, wow, I really was a punk. I had a good job. I had a good employer treat, and I just didn't do it right. And then he thinks, okay, I should be grateful, actually. Not only did he kick me out, that I had the job before. And then he goes back and says, listen, I don't want my regular job back. I'm going to work for free. You just let me in and I'll work for free. I don't even, because just out of appreciation, he changes his attitude completely. So sometimes Krishna turns the lights off and says, okay, you're going to take it for granted. You're going to mess around and try to get the best of both worlds. Let me lock you out for a little while and see how you react to that. And you go like, oh my God, I lost the association of devotees. I forgot the Panchatattva Mahamantra or whatever else it is. Other stupidity I went back into. But in the Bhagavatam, there's something that Narada tells Vyasadeva. He said a devotee is never forget. It never forgets like an ordinary person. He never forgets like an ordinary person. He says because he was embraced once by Krishna, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says he's haunted then by the ghost of rasa. He's out there, the material world's like, yeah, somebody comes over to his den and he says, what are those beads over there? It's like, oh yeah, right, I forgot. I used to chant on those. And then, so, well, tell me about chanting. It's like, nah, I can't. No, tell me, what do you chant? And it's like, Hare Krishna. It's like, Hare Krishna, I heard of that before. Let's see you do it. And then gradually, Krishna will pull the person back in. And, he does it to increase our desire. But once somebody surrenders to Krishna one time, then Krishna's taking care of him. So Prabhupada said it's not like an ordinary person who's lost. He compares that there's an orphan who really has no parents and could end up anywhere. There's no resting place ultimately, and a child with wealthy, good parents, and somehow he runs away from home. Some way they're going to find him, bring him back, and his separation and loss of guardianship is totally different from the ordinary person, the ordinary kid. So devotees are like that. Even if somehow or other Krishna allows the person to forget, he brings him back. And then there's more gratitude. That's, I blew it. Let me now become more sincere. And be careful. I was reading today about how anybody can become besmirched. We know that word, right? Besmirched with sinful reactions. Prabhupada mentions how Jamadagni, the father of Parashuram, he became angry at his wife because she looked lustfully at a Gandharva. He told the kids, you should kill her. And they said, forget it, Dad. And told Parashuram, and he said, okay, if I don't do it, my father will curse me. He's very powerful. If I do it, he has the power to bring him back to life. And so I'll do it and then ask for a boon to bring him back to life, which is what he did. But the point is, Jamadagni, great soul, there was some sinful connection with the material world. And Kartavira Arjun and anybody can get caught up in the material world, no matter how great they are. Even Parashuram, Prabhupada said, he killed too many. He didn't have to do that many. So Prabhupada writes there that therefore everyone should be cautious and sagacious. You should be cautious and sagacious. You should act like a sage in this world, and you should be really careful because you can get caught up. And if you do get caught up and then somehow or other you get separated from Krishna consciousness or you forget, then there's a way in which Krishna will remind you again, and then when you come back, you'll be able to relish it even more. Is that what you were, was that in the neighborhood of what you were asking?
That answered all possible
Okay.
questions. Thank you, Guru
All right.
Maharaj.
Oh, that's good.
Guru Maharaj, when we study about the three realizations of God, the Brahman realization, the Paramatma realization, and the Bhagavan realization, when I was reading that, I had a doubt. We tend to consider the Brahman realization as just the just lost it. we just consider it as the effulgence of the Lord, his presence in without a form. And then we consider Paramatma as the Lord within the heart. And then we get to Bhagavan, where we can have a personal relationship with him. I was thinking that when you said about this feeling of happiness, this bliss that we experience in Brahman is so many times more, it's so much more than what we can even think of experiencing in the material world. I've not heard many people speak about the experience of happiness in the Paramatma realization. When you actually are meditating on the form of the Lord, what is the kind of bliss that we're talking about when there is no interaction with the Lord?
Well, in the relationship with Paramatma really has to do with being the order supplier in the material world. And there's a difference in attitude that Krishna says in the Gita, Ye yatamam prapadyante tamstataiva bhajam yaham mama vartmana vartante manusya partha sarvasha. You know, when devotees who are performing bhakti in the association of Shuddha Bhaktas, they're not seeing Paramatma in their heart. They see Shamasundar, Krishna. Premanjana chudita bhakti vilochanena santak sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. Yam shama sundaram achintya gunaswarupam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. The yogis, they're doing ashtanga by their own power, and they're not steeped in bhakti, and they don't have the association of pure devotees, and therefore they may see Paramatma. And the relationship with Paramatma, as I said, is order supplier. That's what Paramatma, he has no consort, and he's also here in the material world just as kind of a warden to look over the living entity and also to fulfill the desires. But when one switches over to a mood of service, one then sees a different form of the Lord, which isn't Paramatma, who's fulfilling my desires since the time immemorial with the Shamasundar form. So the bliss is minimal for the yogis who see the Paramatma feature, because their attitude is different. The reciprocation is different from coming from Krishna. There's some descriptions there in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam about the yogis. It's not that there's no happiness. I mean, it's the Lord. We want to see the Lord. In fact, that's the only place we can feel replenished. When in the Tattva Sandarbha, it's mentioned how when we sleep, the reason we become refreshed is because in that deep sleep, we have some proximity to the supersoul, and therefore we get enlivened. So there's an enlivenment that comes there from association with Paramatma. There's my source, and the source of the universe, the controller of the universe, supreme soul in this world. And then, there's descriptions there of the devotee being enthralled with the vision of the Lord and so forth. But the bliss, the ananda, comes when one begins to take a service attitude out of Shantaras, which is kind of like the yogis in Paramatma, Shanta, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And then into Dasyaras, where there's this feeling of service. I'm sorry I missed everything out on the board here, because looks like we're out of time, right, Hansapriya?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes,
Hare Krishna.
we would like you to lead us into the Damodar Ashtakam, and since it's our first day.
Okay.
But you can go on, I mean, for next few minutes answer questions.
Well, there's 2 more minutes. So there's so much on the board. I mean, there's tons on the board. And most of them are questions. There are few reflections. Krishna. Okay, one from the board. A question. Tadiya Seva. It is common phenomena that living entities looking for happiness in this material world because the nature of this material world is dukkha, unhappiness. Sometimes serious tragedy occurs in the life of living entity. A sense of hopelessness, frustration, and pessimistic attitude can take over the living entity. In spite of good philosophy and good reasoning, that pessimistic attitude can stay in the mind and cause pain in the mind. Please enlighten how this can be removed from the mind. Yeah, that's the plight of us here in the material world. I mean, newsflash, and this is a spoiler alert. So if you don't want one like that, cover your ears. But the whole material world gets destroyed in the end. This is how this whole thing ends up, by the way. Everybody gets killed. Everyone's died. You know, in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the universal form, that Krishna's just chomping on everybody as a universal form. You know, they're entering into his mouths and he's like, and Prabhupada said it's like, you know, he's like eating a giant eating out of a bowl. Hanumat Prashek Swami Maharaj and I were studying the Gita together. He sent me a little cartoon of a giant eating out of a bowl. You know, it's people. I mean, it's the material world's a disaster. To again quote our president, it's a disaster. You know, the whole material world's a big disaster. So, you know, what to speak of, yeah, we're going to lose everything. We're going to lose all our relatives. And throughout the Bhagavatam, not subtly, but very strategically, here and there, it says, here's a little story for you. And at the end, everyone dies and it's all taken away. And, you know, the Shukadev eases us through the whole scenario here in the material world. No matter what way you look at it, that's how it ends up. So coming to reality, you know, we're not trying to, you know, paint just a bleak picture of the material world, but that's what it is. But in another way, it's not. Bilvamangal Thakur says he sees the material world as the abode of bliss. Because why? Because he sees it for service. As soon as you become a bhakta and you realize everything can be used for service, then wherever the devotee goes, he or she sees, okay, I can engage this. In fact, story, the Vaikuntha airplane comes, they send a Viman, you know, they send an Uber for you, take you back. And and the devotee's like, oh, that's all right. I'm really busy right now. I'm doing my seva. You know, that's the mood of the devotees. In fact, 2 devotees were so absorbed in book distribution. Everybody used to come in ISKCON for the Mayapur festival every year. And there were 2 devotees in Germany, in Switzerland, that were really absorbed in book distribution. And Prabhupada asked where they were, and they said that they didn't want to come, Prabhupada. They wanted to keep distributing books. And Prabhupada appreciated that mood. You just stay on the field and continue serving. So the devotees become so absorbed that they practically, there are comings and goings here and there of everything, but they're able to stay above that traumatic feeling where, oh yes, I've lost everything. Well, we've already lost everything. Read Bali Maharaj. Bali says, you know, it's like, sure, I'll give it all away. It's going to go away anyway. Might as well give it to you. And read about Didichi. It's like, Didichi, can we have your bones as a donation? And he said, of course. Why not? They're already pretty much, it's you know, it's already a done deal. They're going to be taken by somebody. Might as well give them to Vishnu. So that's the mood of the devotees. And the trauma can be overcome by association with Vaishnavas. You can process all this because Vaishnavas are compassionate. They know you're hurting. They've hurt also, and they know how to process it. And if you're with pure devotees who are above the fray, you'll see that there's a steadiness there that will help you overcome these kinds of things. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Atma upamyena sarvatra samam pashiti Arjuna, sukham va yadiva dukam so yogi paramo mataha. The devotees are the best, he says, because they're full of compassion. And they've already been through all this stuff. And they know how it hurts, but they still show you how to process it in Krishna consciousness. Because that's where they live. They're already transcendental to the trauma of the material world. So the answer again is, go on chanting Hare Krishna and do take shelter of the pure devotees, because they can save you from the plight of the trauma of the material world. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Namamishwaram Satchit Anandarupam Tasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam
Namamishwaram Satchit
Lasat Yashoda Biyolukala Davamanam Param Rushtam Latyanta Todrutya Gopya
Yashoda Biyolukala Davamanam Param Rushtam
Rudantam Muhurnetra Jugmam Rajantam Karambuja Jugmina Saptankanitram Rudantam Muhurnetra Jugmam Rujantam Karambuja Yugena Satankanetram. Shakam Patrire Kankakanta Stita Graivam Damodaram Bhaktibhadram Shakam Patrire Kankakanta Stita Graivam Damodaram Bhaktibhadram Svalila Bhirananda Kunde Sagosham Nibhajanta Makyapayantam Svalila Bhirananda Kunde Sagosham Nimajanta Makyapayantam Shitageshu Bhakterjitatvam Puna Prema Tastam Shatavritti Vande Shitageshu Bhakterjitatvam Puna Prema Tastam Shatavritti Vande Deva Moksham Na Mokshavatimba Nachanyam Vrineham Varisharapiha Shavadimba Nachanyam Vrineham Varisharapiha Idam Deva Purnata Gopala Balam Sadame Manastya Virastam Kimanya Idam Deva Purnata Gopala Balam Idam Deva Purnata Gopala Balam Sada Me Manastya Virastam Himanyaya Idam te mukambojam atyanta nilay Vitam kundalai snigdha raktaishcha gopya Idam te mukambojam atyanta nilay Vitam kundalai snigdha raktaishcha gopya Chumbitam bimba raktadaram me Manastya virastamalam lakshalabhaya Chumbitam bimba raktadaram me Manastya virastamalam lakshalabhaya Nice, pretty good, good. Namo Deva Damodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabodhuka Jadhabdi Magna Namo Deva Damodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabodhuka Jalabdi Magna Kripa Drishti Vrishyati Dinam Vatanu Vihani Shamamagna Midyakshi Drishya Kripa Drishti Vrishyati Dinam Vatanu Vihani Shamamagna Midyakshi Drishya Kuveratma Jalbhatha Mudyaiva Yadvat Jaya Mochitau Bhakti Bhajau Kritau Cha Kuveratma Jalbhatha Mudyaiva Yadvat Jaya Mochitau Bhakti Bhajau Kritau Cha swakame priyachcha namo shigraho me sthidamodareha. Tata prema bhaktin swakame priyachcha namokshe graho me sthidamodareha. Namaste studamne spuratiptidamne Tvariyodaraya tarishvasadamne. Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam. Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam. Moradikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam. Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Supreme Lord, whose form is the embodiment of eternal existence, knowledge and bliss, whose shark-shaped earrings are swinging to and fro, who is beautifully shining in the divine realm of Gokula, who I, due to the offense of breaking the pot of yogurt, that his mother was churning into butter and then stealing the butter that was kept hanging from a swing, is quickly running from the wooden grinding mortar in fear of Mother Yashoda, but who has been caught from behind by her who ran after him with greater speed. To that Supreme Lord Sri Damodar, I offer my humble obeisances. Seeing the whipping stick in his mother's hand, he is crying and rubbing his eyes again and again with his two lotus hands. His eyes are filled with fear, and the necklace of pearls around his neck, which is marked with 3 lines like a conch shell, is shaking because of his quick breathing due to crying. To this Supreme Lord, Sri Damodar, whose belly is bound not with ropes, but with his mother's pure love, I offer my humble obeisances. By such childhood pastimes as this, he is drowning in the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy, and is revealing to those devotees who are absorbed in knowledge of his supreme majesty and opulence that he is only conquered by devotees whose pure love is imbued with intimacy and is free from all conceptions of awe and reverence. With great love, I again offer my obeisances to Lord Damodar hundreds and hundreds of times. O Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I do not pray to you for the boon of impersonal liberation, nor the highest liberation of eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon which may be obtained by executing the 9 processes of bhakti. O Lord, I simply wish that this form of yours as Balagopal in Vrindavan may ever be manifest in my heart, for what is the use to me of any other boon besides this? O Lord, your lotus face, which is encircled by locks of soft black hair tinged with red, is kissed again and again by Mother Yashoda, and your lips are reddish like the bimba fruit. May this beautiful vision of your lotus face be ever manifest in my heart. Thousands and thousands of other benedictions are of no use to me. O Supreme Godhead, I offer my obeisances unto you. O Damodar, O Ananta, O Vishnu, O Master, O my Lord, be pleased upon me. By showering your glance of mercy upon me, deliver this poor ignorant fool who is immersed in an ocean of worldly sorrows, and become visible to my eyes. O Lord Damodar, just as the 2 sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Nanukuvera, were delivered from the curse of Narada and made into great devotees by you in your form as a baby tied with rope to a wooden grinding mortar, in the same way, please give to me your own prema bhakti. I only long for this and have no desire for any kind of liberation. O Lord Damodar, I first of all offer my obeisances to the brilliantly effulgent rope which binds your belly. I then offer my obeisances to your belly, which is the abode of the entire universe. I humbly bow down to your most beloved Srimati Radharani, and I offer my obeisances to you, the Supreme Lord, who displays unlimited pastimes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe. Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe. Jai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Jai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Gaur Premanande. Any thoughts, realizations? Did it carry you away?
Yes, Prabhu, I think it's one of the first times that you're, or at least from our memory, that you're singing Damodar Ashtakam at ISV this year.
I was
Wow.
going to chime into the same that this is actually the first time in a long, long, long time that you actually sang Damodar Ashtakam for here at ISV. Because all these years you've been taking shelter of Giriraj, and we hardly get to hear you sing Damodar Ashtakam, and you totally took us to the Vrindavan today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was remembering being at Govardhan at this time. Or, before I started staying at Govardhan, I'd stay at the Goshala in Vrindavan, and Indra Prabhu was still there that time doing his Damodar Ashtakam. Wasn't as crowded as it is now, so you could still get in and offer a lamp. But all those, I just noticed that while we were singing it, that all those remembrances of those places and the times, they're all in there. And I was thinking about how the process of devotional service is so effective in that, as humans, we take in all these feelings and sights and sounds. They're all stored in there. And when they're devotional, then they can come out at any time, really. Yang vapi spanan bhavam. Really devotional service is so nice because our business is just to drink in sweetness all the time. It doesn't feel like it when we're distracted or there's a covering that doesn't make it so we can't taste it yet. But really, it's just sweet all the time. If going from one thing to the next where we're hearing something that's beautiful and evocative, or singing or tasting, being with devotees in sweet exchanges, and that life just grows, from the feelings in the heart. There's exchanges with devotees, and then there's exchanges with Krishna, and then it just grows sweeter and thicker. Really, the spiritual world means just the constant thickening of that emotional connection. That's why bhakti is so powerful, because love conquers all. Someone, Mukharavinda Prabhu, told me the other day that we were talking about titles that we've done over at the corporate side. He said, well, the one everyone liked the best was called All You Need Is Love. Just as far as the title goes. Because that's really what everybody wants, the ultimate experience. But it has to be placed in the right way. It has for the right person. And that's why it feels so satisfying. It's just the most natural thing. What else? Who wrote Aho Bhagyam? Bhakti Rohit, that's nice. Aho Bhagyam, Aho Bhagyam. That's from the 10th canto, 14th chapter. It's a very important chapter this month. If anybody wants to do a chapter of Bhagavatam, that's a nice one.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
It was so beautiful, Prabhu. And I was just thinking that this morning, after a long time, I actually got to see Radha Madan Mohan. And I was praying to Radha Madan Mohan that, it's been several months. We don't get to see the deities. So I was just praying that I hope COVID, we will do some extra rounds for COVID, whichever living entity it is. Make him a devotee in his next life and let him leave us from all this calamities that we are going through. So it's been.
I'm glad you said that, because I thought you said you were about to say, I hope this COVID goes on and on.
No.
I thought you were Queen Kunti all of a sudden. Okay.
No, I was just thinking that I was missing Radha Madan Mohan, and I can imagine how much you must be missing Vrindavan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also
Yeah,
thinking
definitely.
the same, Prabhu, because I remember you sharing an experience where you were in Vrindavan when your mom or dad passed away.
Dad, yeah.
And even then, you never left Vrindavan, and I was just thinking how much you would be missing. And we could see that separation in the way in which the song that you sang today.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for
your
reminding me that.
session.
It was, when your mom or dad leaves the world, it's a very heavy thing. And I remember that thinking, well, what to do? What can I do? First of all, and then I thought, I better go on parikram and offer it to my father. And it actually was satisfying, walking and walking and walking and walking and walking and walking every day in Vrindavan. And it kind of showed what I was saying earlier. Kapila Dev said it dissolves, the devotional service dissolves the subtle body. And that hurt that you feel in this world when you lose a loved one, it's just nothing can erase it. People go for alcohol and all these type of things. Irish wake is famous. People go get drunk. But it doesn't, it just masks the whole thing. But when you walk it off in Vrindavan, or you chant it off at home and process it through taking shelter of the holy names, then it actually becomes something else. It starts to transform into bhakti, as that emotion really is meant for Krishna. Everything gets apportioned properly. That's why he uses the word digested in the Bhagavatam, because digestion is really amazing process, that you eat something and we have no idea how it gets divided up. It puts all in the right place. The glucose goes to the brain, the proteins go somewhere else. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know a couple little things, but the fact is that it's very complex. And so are our emotions, and how can we sort them out? But if we chant, if we take shelter of Krishna, then he sorts them all out, puts them in the right place.
Thank you.
Any other thing?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I'm very new to this, and I have been attending, I attended this Zoom meetings few times, and I'm really enjoying it. Thank you very much. And I have a question. When you say do a lamp to Damodar, ghee lamp, is it just, I do it in the morning? Is it like whole day, or I just put a little bit of ghee and I do the diya and it just goes away?
Oh, it's so nice what you're doing. It's so nice. Yes, it's just doing just right.
Oh, thank you.
Offer once a day, if you can do morning, or if you can do evening, whenever you can. And if you can sing this song before, after, during, then it's really nice too.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Good work.
And
Nice
I live in Merced, so I always wanted to come to Sunnyvale every week, and it was very challenging. So now I feel like I'm visiting the ISKCON every week. I hope when it all opens up, I'm gonna come, hopefully more than what I have done in the past.
That's up in the mountains, right?
Yeah, it's between Modesto and Fresno. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area up there.
Thank you.
Nice. That's good for doing japa meditation. You're like almost in the Himalayas.
Oh, it's a flat land. It's not, yeah.
On the way
flat.
to the Sierra.
Okay. Yes, not quite.
Well, I'm thrilled to meet you.
Thank
and
you.
We look forward
and
to meeting
I'm very
you in
happy
person.
to be here.
That's great. Really nice. Okay, any last comments?
Yes, Maharaj, I just had one reflection quickly. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, please.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I was just talking to my, friends and cousins earlier on, like, couple of hours back. And, they were all getting ready, with their dinner and chips, to do different things. Somebody wanted to watch the TV shows, somebody wanted to watch the football. And, here I am, right? I'm looking at all the devotees and so sincerely, like, they are singing, they are doing their service. And I was like, no way I want to be anywhere, so I'm so glad that we are getting this opportunity, and don't want to miss this at all. So I'm so glad and thankful to everybody that we are able to do this in spite of the pandemic and whatnot, right? In spite of all the hurdles, we still can do what we can do. So that's amazing.
That's called Vidyam Cha Chayas Tadvedo Bayam Saha Avidyayam Ratum Tirtva. Finish it. Thank you. Yeah, when you see side by side the craziness of the dullness of the material nature and devotional service becomes even more compelling. So what you just described, where you can see, like, why would I do that? It all looks so just unappealing when you have the sweetness of devotional service, and it augments your realization of how important devotional service is. I just noticed somehow or other we got Pranahari Prabhu on here. Pranahari, Hare Krishna.
Jai Guru Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Hey, Haribo.
My humble obeisances.
I'm glad to see you. I hope it's not too late. Divyangi, are you still in New Vrindavan, or are you back in New York?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, I just back.
Just back in New York, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
I actually wanted to share one thing.
Yes, please go ahead.
I was just really appreciating what you said about that. Sometimes it's even for us, it's hard to understand our emotions, what we feel, and what we, especially maybe like moving from one place to another place. And it's nice to take shelter of chanting.
Yes, always, always. That's the only solution, ultimately. Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we have Shreya, Godruma Prana, Koladvip Pran, Shiantariksha, Chindam Varantam, Sukharupa. They're moving, so I'm missing some. Ankit, Jai Kanai, Hare Krishna, Ankit.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, Danvat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
It was transporting experience today to hear Damodarastakam from you. Actually, we've been praying that we have heard, a lot of songs, traditional songs, but I haven't heard Damodarastakam from Guru Maharaj for a long time. So when Ansapriya Mantaji announced today, I was like very joyous occasion for us to hear from you. And it was definitely a very, very, enriching and transporting experience. Thank you for singing, Maharaj. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Well, dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Lakshmi Shingadev, if you so desire, please let us dive deep into the mood of Kartik, Vrat, and immerse our hearts in hearing Krishna Katha, remembering you in your Damodar form, and continuously chanting Hare Krishna throughout the whole month, and also showing mercy to others by distributing Bhagavad Gita in mass quantities. Thank you for considering our request. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a heartfelt experience and bittersweet in a way, missing Vrindavan, but it's so sweet being able to, be here and be with everybody at this time. It's just really amazing times, isn't it? Ones that we'll never forget. It's just the impressions. The context makes so much difference, doesn't it? In everything. Okay, Hare Krishna. Can everyone unmute and please say Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu just wanted to
Kalpatarishta, Kripa Vaishnavebhyo
Hare Krishna.
Pratavimanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.